I packed my bag in 40 seconds. Opened the door in 6. On the 7th, he was there. Leaning against the doorway, arms crossed loosely over his chest, like this wasn't the 3rd time in a week I'd tried to leave. "Stay," he said, voice low, not pleading, not forceful, just inevitable, a breath. Then tonight, I stared at him, my hand still on the doorknob, the strap of my bag cutting into my shoulder. I hated that word. Tonight, as if tomorrow would be any different. "You know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "for someone who clearly doesn't want me here, you're really committed to preventing me from leaving." He didn't blink. He never blinked at my sarcasm, never fought, never rose to the bait. He was like fog in the forest, impossible to hold, impossible to ignore. "Just tonight," he said again. And then he stepped aside, turning his back to me, vanishing down the marble hallway like a ghost that only occasionally remembered to haunt. I closed the door, because I always did. This house was a museum. No, a mausoleum. Too cold to be lived in, too perfect to feel real. Clean lines, expensive materials. The kitchen gleamed, but I'd never seen anyone actually cook in it. The dining table could seat 12, but I always ate alone. Even my footsteps echoed wrong, too loud, too lonely. I dropped the bag on the floor of the bedroom they gave me, guest room technically, because I was a guest here, or a hostage, depending on the day. The contract said I was part of a peace agreement. My pack needed protection. His pack, stronger, richer, wanted something in return. And what better offering than a pretty little omega with good breeding and a bad attitude? Me. Seth Draven didn't ask for me. He signed the treaty, nodded once at my arrival, then went right back to pretending I didn't exist. Most alphas would have marked me by now. Made it formal, official, taken me into their bed, if not their heart. Not Seth. He barely spoke to me. Didn't touch me. Didn't even look at me unless he had to. But he also wouldn't let me go. 3 times now I'd tried to leave. 3 times he'd been there, like some kind of silent barrier between me and the outside world. Not with threats, not with chains, just stay. Tonight, and every time like an idiot, I stayed. Because I wanted to know why. Was he afraid of something? Ashamed of me? Or was he just cruel in a new, quiet way I hadn't yet learned to name? The walls of this room were too white, the sheets too stiff. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor, hating everything. The silence, the polished wood, the distant hum of expensive electricity. And I hated him, most of all, for making me care enough to be hurt. I found him in the study. Of course he was reading. Leather armchair, fire that burned more for atmosphere than heat. He looked like a man out of an old portrait, perfectly composed, sharp-suited, eyes dark with thought. I hated that he was beautiful. I hated that it still mattered. "I'm not your prisoner," I said. He turned a page. "I'm not your pet, or your trophy, or whatever the hell this arrangement is supposed to be." No reaction. I crossed the room. "You want me to stay? Fine. But maybe try saying something else. Anything else. Because right now, you're not a mate. You're a ghost." He finally looked up. His gaze settled on me like a weight. Not angry, not cold, just unreadable. "You hate it here," he said. "Yes," I snapped. "Congratulations, you noticed." A pause. Then, "But you haven't left," and there it was again. The stillness in his voice, the calm that felt like the eye of a storm, like he was holding something back, and I didn't know if it was violence or tenderness, or something much worse. I exhaled through my nose. "You think that's some kind of proof that this is working? That I'm just waiting for you to change your mind?" Silence. "You're not going to," I whispered, mostly to myself. "Are you?" He didn't answer. I turned on my heel. "Good talk, Alpha." Back in my room, I lay on the bed with the lights off, listening to the silence wrap around me like static. My fingers curled around the strap of my still-packed bag on the floor. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd leave for real. unless he said it again. And the worst part was, I already knew he would. They never asked what I wanted. Not when they signed the treaty. Not when they packed my bags. Not when they handed me over like a ceremonial bottle of wine. One with a pretty label, expired content, and no say in where it would be uncorked. I remember standing at the edge of the border, arms stiff at my sides, my pack's elders behind me, Seth's people in front of me. And Seth himself, standing just off-center. Watching. Not cold exactly, but unreadable. Like a man reviewing a business transaction, not receiving a person. I remember the silence, not a welcome, not a question, just a nod. And then they left me there, like a thing, a gift, a problem off their hands. I wasn't bonded, I wasn't loved, I was traded, and no one asked if I wanted to go. That memory burned behind my eyes even now, days, weeks, later. What I hadn't lost was the heavy knot in my chest that pulsed every time I looked at this place. This house, this cold, elegant prison. I needed air. The hallways were polished to a shine, too clean to breathe in. I ended up in the back courtyard, where the late morning sun filtered through sharp hedges, and the fountain gurgled like it had a purpose. I sat on a stone bench and let the cold soak into me. Morning, someone said behind me, or is it technically afternoon? I forget how time works when no one speaks to you. I turned. The man standing there looked like someone who had once tried to escape, and then decided to make the cage comfortable. He was tall, lean, in a crisp button-up shirt rolled at the sleeves. Hair slightly mussed, a mug in one hand. Eyes alert. Older than me. B-class aura. Definitely a beta. You're the ghost, I said. He raised an eyebrow. And you're the omega who throws shoes at doors. I missed on purpose. That's what all the best throwers say. I smirked before I could stop myself. He stepped forward and offered the mug. Tea. Not poisoned. Probably. I took it. It was warm and bitter and almost human. I'm Corin, he added, sitting beside me. But everyone just says Cory. House manager, schedule master, official maker of awkward silences slightly less awkward. I side-eyed him. Are you allowed to talk to me? He shrugged. Technically, no one said I couldn't. Besides, I've always been fond of stray animals. Charming, I muttered. You call all omegas animals? Only the ones who snarl. He stayed a while, and in that brief, oddly refreshing conversation, I learned more than I had in a week here. Cory wasn't just a servant. He'd been with Seth for years. Before the treaty, before the tension, before the loneliness. He'd seen this house full of people, then empty. He's not cruel, Cory said at one point, carefully. Just cracked. Quietly. And that's supposed to make it better? No. But it might make it understandable. Later that day, I met her. In the greenhouse, tucked at the far corner of the estate, where sunlight spilled across rows of herbs and wildflowers, I found a woman seated on a cushion, clipping dried lavender into a bowl. She looked up and smiled like we'd met before. You must be the new ghost, she said gently. That seems to be the title of the day, I replied. She patted the cushion beside her. Sit. Unless silence is your love language, in which case, you'll fit right in. I sat. I'm Ilaria, she said. Former bonded omega. Current unpaid gardener. She was older, maybe in her 40s, with a calmness that wasn't forced, like she'd already lived through the storm and built a house on its ruins. I didn't know there were others, I said. Oh, we're everywhere. Some of us just learn how to become invisible better than others. I looked at her. Why are you still here? I like the plants, and I like watching confused boys trying to decide whether they want to scream or cry. I laughed, a little, and then stopped. What if I want to do both? She passed me a sprig of mint, then do both, but never wait for someone to give you permission to feel. I wanted to stay there forever, in that soft patch of green, where someone saw me. Not as a symbol, not as a pawn, but as a boy who didn't ask for any of this. Before I left, she said, if you want to wake him up, don't be sweet, be sharp. That night, I stood in front of Seth's office door. I didn't knock, I just opened it. He looked up from his papers, impassive as ever. You keep saying stay, I said, so maybe I will. He waited. But I'm done waiting for you to come alive. If you're going to leave me in this house, in this deal, in this nothing, then at least know that I'm going to make it loud. He didn't speak. I smiled, slow and mean. Let's see if I can make a ghost scream, and I shut the door behind me. There's a kind of silence that hums. It doesn't settle. It doesn't soothe. It buzzes, under your skin, between your ribs, at the base of your skull. That was this house. Always too still, too perfect, like it was waiting for someone to scream just so it could sigh in relief. So I decided to be the one to scream, or at least, make a little noise. The event was formal, not a party, but a strategic gathering of alphas and betas from surrounding allied territories. Peacekeeping, networking, whatever. I chose my outfit with the kind of spiteful precision that came from hours of silence and nothing to lose. Black, tight, bold shoulders, low neckline. A chain at my throat that looked almost like a collar, but wasn't. No one owned me, and I wanted every person in that room to know it. When I walked into the grand hall, heads turned. It was worth it for that alone. I smiled sweetly at the gasps, the subtle scent shifts in the air, the way some conversations slowed just a beat. Let him look. I didn't see Seth at first, not directly, but I felt him. Somewhere in the room, standing still like a pillar while everything else rotated around him. I worked the crowd like I'd been raised for this. And in a way, I had. I knew how to make people laugh, how to tilt my head just enough to suggest intrigue without invitation, how to flirt without promising, how to threaten without speaking. And then, halfway through a conversation with a pair of dull-eyed heirs, he arrived. Cale Valen. God, even his name sounded like a perfume. Tall, graceful, dangerously confident, like he knew he could have anything in the room and was just waiting to decide what amused him most. He was smiling before he even reached me. I thought this gathering would be another dull excuse for handshakes and bad wine, he said, voice smooth as poured velvet. And then I saw you. I arched a brow. Flattery? That's your opening move? It's a classic for a reason. He offered his hand. I didn't take it. Instead, I tilted my head and gave him the full weight of my gaze. And what exactly do you think I am, Alpha Valen? A reason to stay longer? A way to annoy your rivals? A pretty distraction? I think, he said, stepping a little closer, you're the only person in this room who doesn't bore me. The air between us shifted. Just a little. He wasn't subtle, but he wasn't pushy either. And behind him, across the room, finally, I saw Seth. He was watching. Of course he was. Back straight, jaw tight, one hand holding a drink he clearly wasn't drinking. His eyes locked on me like I'd said his name out loud. Good. Let him watch. Later, after the guests had mostly dispersed and I was halfway to my room, I heard him. Don't speak to him again. I turned slowly in the hallway. Seth was standing there in shadow, his voice clipped, breath low. What? Cale, don't entertain him. I laughed. Entertain? That's rich. What exactly am I supposed to be doing? Sitting quietly in the corner like a well-trained ornament? I'm serious. And I'm confused, I snapped, walking closer. You don't touch me. You don't speak to me. You don't even claim me. But the second someone else shows interest, he's not safe. I blinked. That was unexpected. You mean politically? Or emotionally? Or is this just territorial posturing from someone who thinks he still owns the contract on me? His eyes flared. Just for a second. I don't own you. No, I said, stepping close enough to feel the tension rolling off him. But you're sure as hell trying to act like you do. A pause. Long enough to feel like a verdict. We're not bonded, I finished softly. You don't have a claim. He didn't answer. Didn't argue. Didn't reach for me. He just turned and walked. Away. Like always. I stood there long after his footsteps faded, breathing hard. Fingers clenched around nothing. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't gentle. He was a wall, and I was done throwing myself at it. But God's help me, I wanted him to break. Cale didn't leave. That was the problem. Most alphas flirted, smirked, circled once or twice, then got bored when I didn't melt on cue. But not him. Cale Valen made it a game. And I was too angry, too stubborn, too stupidly curious to walk away. So I played along. He found me in the training courtyard the next day. I wasn't training. I was sitting on the edge of the stone ring, legs swinging, a little too dressed up for the occasion. Trying to look dangerous? He asked. Trying to look unavailable, I said, not looking at him. Then you failed, he murmured. Because you've never looked more tempting. I turned to him, eyes sharp. Is this where you say something poetic about fate? No. This is where I ask if you want me to kiss you. I laughed, quick and sharp. You're direct. I'm Alpha, he said. We don't circle what we want forever. Something in me twisted at that, because someone did. Cale was handsome, confident, easy. I could feel the heat of him just standing there. He didn't make my skin itch with confusion. He didn't look through me. He wanted me. So for a moment, I let myself imagine it. Let him take one step closer. Let his hand graze my jaw. Let him lean in, and then step away from him. That voice, low, steel-laced, sharp enough to cut the wind. Cale and I both turned. Seth stood on the far edge of the courtyard, fist clenched, shoulders tight. He looked furious, and for once, he didn't hide it behind ice. Cale smiled slowly. Possessive now, are we? You're done here. No, I said sharply. You don't get to speak for me. Seth's gaze pinned me. Go inside, Evan. Why? So you can ignore me in private instead of public? His jaw flexed. He took a step forward. Cale raised a hand. This is amusing, but I don't think your Omega appreciates being ordered around. I'm not his anything, I said coldly. We're not bonded. We're not mates. I'm just the asset his pack received in exchange for not being crushed. Seth moved fast. 1 second he was across the courtyard. The next he was there, gripping Cale's shoulder, dragging him back, pressing him to the wall with one brutal controlled shove. Cale didn't fight, didn't speak. He just looked between us, then smiled like he'd won something. I see, he said quietly. Guess you do want him. You're just too scared to admit it. Then he left, and I was alone, with Seth, still vibrating from the suddenness of it all. I turned on him. Are you out of your mind? He didn't answer. Dragging him like that. What, are we measuring dominance now? You haven't touched me in weeks, but the second someone else... He stepped closer. I stepped back. His voice was low, rough. You want me to touch you? I stared at him. Don't, I whispered. Not like this. His hand moved. fingers grazing my neck, the chain I wore like defiance. "You wear this like it's armor," he said. "Maybe it is." He leaned down, breath hot against my skin. "You provoke like you're not afraid of being answered." And then he kissed me. Hard, bruising, possessive. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't slow. It was everything we'd held back and shoved down and refused to name. It was pain and hunger and silence finally exploding into something real. I kissed him back, because I was done pretending. His hands pushed through my hair, then down my back, dragging me closer. I pressed into him, heat rising, pulse pounding. I felt a tremble in his grip, like he was holding something barely controlled. We stumbled back into the hall, into a room I didn't care to name. My back hit the door. His mouth found my throat, only the crash of two people too stubborn to ask for what they needed until it boiled over. When it was over, we were both breathless. Seth stood, backed away slowly, his chest rising and falling in deep shuddering breaths. He looked at me like I was something dangerous. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out the door. I woke up alone. The room smelled like him, dark spice and storm. The sheets were still warm but cooling, the imprint of him on the pillow already fading. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, no note, no explanation, just silence, again. Eventually I got up, dressed slowly, walked to the guest room, the one I was technically still assigned to. My bag was still in the closet, still half packed from last week. I pulled it out and started folding things, neatly, methodically, but I didn't go, not yet. I left the bag by the door, like a question, like a threat. Let him decide what to do next, because I sure as hell wasn't going to be the one to chase anymore. He was gone, again, no note, no scent trail, no apology. Just vanished like what happened between us had meant nothing. I checked the courtyard, the study, the upper balcony. Nothing. And the longer I didn't find him, the louder the storm inside me howled, because this time had been different, real, and maybe I was a fool for thinking that would change anything, but damn it, he kissed me like he needed it. Held me like he'd die without it, and then disappeared like none of it mattered. I needed to hit something. Instead, I found Corey. He was trimming hedges like this was a perfectly normal morning. "Where is he?" I snapped. Corey didn't look up. "Try hello next time." "Corey." He sighed, dropped the shears. "West Wing, old music room." I blinked. "That's locked." He dusted off his hands. "He keeps the key on him." "But you knew that." I didn't. But I was already moving. The West Wing was older, colder, less polished. Dust lingered in the corners like it had a right to stay. Inside the light was dim, curtains half drawn. A piano sat in the corner, untouched. A fireplace glowed low, flickering against bookshelves and shadows. And in the middle of it all, Seth, slouched in an armchair, a half-empty glass in one hand, eyes unfocused, tie loosened, shirt wrinkled like he hadn't slept. He looked, not like an alpha, not like the cold, silent leader I'd come to expect. He looked human. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me. "You disappeared," I said. He didn't answer. Again, still nothing. I crossed the room slowly until I was standing in front of him, close enough to see the faint circles under his eyes. The tension in his jaw, the way his hand clenched around the glass like it was anchoring him to something solid. "You kissed me," I said. "You touched me. And then you left. What the hell am I supposed to do with that?" "I warned you," he said hoarsely. "No, you avoided me. That's not the same thing." He lifted the glass, drank slowly, then set it down. "I didn't think it would matter." "Why? Because I'm just a contract? A token? Something your pack bartered for?" His gaze snapped to mine, sharp, focused now. "Because it always matters, and it always ends badly." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" A pause. And then, without looking at me, he said, "I had an omega once. Before the treaty. Before this house was so damn quiet. We were bonded." The air shifted. My heart thudded once, painfully. "I wasn't supposed to," he continued. "But it happened. Fast. Deep. The kind of bond they write myths about." I didn't speak. And then she got sick. Nothing major at first, just a fever, a slow ache. The healer said she'd recover. He exhaled, looked away. He didn't cry. But the way he said it, like the words had to be dragged out, was worse. "She died in my arms. Not from the illness, from the break." My throat tightened. "A bonded omega can survive without her alpha," he said. "Unless the alpha breaks first." I couldn't breathe, couldn't eat. I pulled away from her. Not because I didn't love her, because I loved her too much. "And she felt it," I whispered. He nodded. "She always did." Silence swelled between us. I sank onto the floor in front of his chair, crossed my legs, stared at the fire. You weren't supposed to be like this, I said quietly. He looked down at me. You were supposed to be cold, distant, detached. I could hate that. I could survive that. I tried to be. You kissed me like you meant it. I did. Then why run? His voice broke, just slightly. Because if I let myself stay, I'll want everything. And I can't survive losing it again. I closed my eyes. That was it. The truth. Raw and ugly and real. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him. But more than anything, I wanted him to be okay. And I hated that I did. I stood slowly. I'm not her, I said. And you're not the same man you were then. But you're still letting her ghost ruin the one thing she died to protect. He didn't move, didn't argue. I looked down at him one last time. You want me to stay, but you don't hold on. You want to protect me, but you won't let me in. You're a war I can't win, Seth, and I'm done bleeding for nothing. I turned, and this time when I walked away, he didn't stop me, and I didn't wait for him to try. I didn't see Seth the next morning, or the one after that. Which was fine, really, great even. Because I needed air, I needed space. I needed a moment where my emotions weren't wrapped in someone else's grief, so I walked. Through the forest behind the estate, through the greenhouse, through my own head. And somewhere between the third loop around the garden and the second cup of aggressively bitter tea, Cale found me. You're hard to catch when you're not performing, he said casually. I looked up from the bench, eyes narrowed. That's because I'm not interested in being caught. He gave me a smile, soft, not cocky this time. It didn't try to seduce, it just was. I'm not here to chase you, he said. I'm here to offer you something you haven't been given yet. Oh yeah? And what's that? A choice? I blinked. Cale sat beside me, careful not to invade my space. For once he didn't smell like challenge or flirtation. He smelled like pine and rain, like someone who meant what they said. You've been passed between alphas like a sealed letter, he said. One delivered, one unopened, and the one in between? Forgotten. I didn't reply, but he wasn't wrong. I'm not like him, Cale added. I don't run. I don't shut down. I don't punish people for being what they are, and what do you think I am? He turned to face me. Strong, messy, worth choosing. The words hit me harder than they should have. Look, he said, quieter now. I'm not pretending I'm your answer. Maybe I'm not even what you want, but I would be what you needed, if you let me. A breath. Then simply, I want to be your pair. For real. No politics, no contracts, just us. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just sat there, heart thudding, mind buzzing. And for once, the silence didn't suffocate me. It felt like the world had finally paused long enough for me to breathe. After Cale left, I found myself in the greenhouse again. Ilaria was trimming roses, her movements precise, graceful. She didn't look up when I entered. You're glowing, she said calmly. Did someone confess their undying devotion? Not quite. Shame. I sat on the stool next to her, watched her snip a thorn and toss it into a metal tin. I think someone just offered me freedom, I said. She smiled, still focused on her roses. No, darling. Someone offered you themselves. You are the one who can give yourself freedom. I don't know what I want. You're allowed not to know, she said. But don't confuse silence with peace. And don't confuse comfort with love. I let that settle. She turned to me then, soft eyes piercing. You're no longer his, or theirs. You're your own. So decide, whose you want to be. Or don't belong to anyone at all. Both are valid. Both are brave. I closed my eyes. And for the first time I realized, no one was waiting to claim me. Not unless I let them. Not unless I chose. That night I stared at the stars through my bedroom window. The air was still, my bag still by the door. But I hadn't moved it. I thought of Cale, of his offer, his steadiness, his warmth. I was grateful. But my heart didn't pull toward him. Not the way it did when I wasn't looking, not the way it still, stupidly, unfairly, twisted when Seth entered a room. That was a problem. But maybe, for the first time, it was mine to solve. I packed slower this time. Not because I wasn't sure, but because for once, I was. Every item I folded felt like a line drawn in sand. Every zipper, every click of the suitcase lock, a sound louder than all the silence in this house. No anger this time. No storm, just stillness. I didn't leave a note. I didn't slam a door. I didn't make a scene. I just picked up the bag, walked through the halls like I belonged to myself again, and reached the front door. And that's when I saw him. Seth. Leaning against the frame, same as that first night, but this time, no tension in his stance, no command in his posture. He looked tired and very, very human. For a long moment we just stared at each other. I waited for the words, the ones he always said, "Stay. Tonight." But they didn't come. Instead, he stepped aside. And with a voice so quiet it almost hurt, he said, "I won't hold you by force. No demand, no plea. Just the truth." I stood frozen. One hand tightening around the handle of my bag, the other clenched at my side. He didn't move, didn't block me, just opened the door and waited. "You're really letting me go," I said, more to myself than to him. That word hit harder than I expected. I stepped forward, past him, through the door. The air outside was cooler than I remembered. The wind carried no scent of him, no trace. 2 steps, 3. I heard the door creak behind me, but he didn't shut it. 4 steps, then I stopped. Not because I was doubting, but because the silence behind me wasn't the same as before. It wasn't cold or cruel. I turned around. He was still there, standing inside the doorway. The way he looked at me, not begging, not breaking. Like he was finally giving me the one thing I'd asked for all along. A choice. I took a slow breath. And then I said, "I didn't choose you. I didn't choose Kale either." His brows furrowed slightly, but he said nothing. I stepped forward. Not close, not inside. Just enough for the wind to carry my words back into the house. "I chose me." A pause. "For the first time, this isn't about what my pack wanted, or what you're afraid of. It's not about being traded, or bonded, or claimed." I swallowed hard. "It's about me deciding what I want, and right now, I want to walk away. Not because I hate you, but because I need to remember how it feels to not be waiting at someone else's door." He looked like he might speak, then didn't. "I don't know if I'll come back," I added. "But if I do, it won't be because you asked, it'll be because I wanted to." And then I turned again. Walked farther this time, down the path, toward the edge of the woods, the weight in my chest lighter than it had been in weeks. For once, I didn't feel chased, didn't feel trapped, I felt free. And God's help me, it terrified me. The guest house was quiet. Not the suffocating kind of quiet I'd grown used to, just still. Like something had finally settled. I lit a small lamp, left my bag by the wall and sat by the window. I wasn't planning anything, not leaving, not staying, just breathing. I had no idea what time it was when I heard the knock. Soft, 2 beats. No authority in it, no command. I didn't move right away, just stared at the door. The second knock was quieter. Almost, unsure. I stood, walked over, opened it. Seth, standing there, alone. No suit jacket, just a dark shirt and slacks. Hair slightly out of place. Eyes, raw, not cold, not guarded, just there. "I didn't know if you'd answer," he said. "Neither did I," a beat. "I'm not here to stop you," he said, voice slow. "Or pull you back, He exhaled. I needed to say something. Without doors between us. He entered slowly, carefully, like the room itself might break under him. He didn't sit, didn't pace, just turned to me and stood still. "I'm not asking to be forgiven," he began. "Not for leaving, not for being silent. But I need you to hear this anyway." I folded my arms. "Then say it." No dominance, no scent, no mask. His throat bobbed. "Okay." He stepped closer, not too close. "I was taught to protect what's mine," he said. "To claim it, mark it, guard it. But no one ever taught me how to want something without trying to own it." I said nothing. "I don't want control over you. I don't want to cage you. I don't want your body out of duty, or your loyalty out of fear." He paused. I just want you. Only you. Whatever that means, however much you choose to give. My hands were trembling, he noticed, but didn't comment. Just took one step closer. I don't need a bond to keep you, he said. I don't need a treaty, or a claim. I need you to want to stay. Not because you're obligated, not because you're afraid, but because you looked at me and thought, yes, him. His voice cracked. I've never wanted anything the way I want to be chosen by you. That did it. The dam inside me cracked. I stepped forward, closed the gap, laid a hand on his chest, not to push, not to test, just to feel the truth of him. Say it again, I whispered, without anything else. Just say it. He covered my hand with his own. His skin was warm, solid. I want you. No pheromones, no alpha weight behind the words. Just a man speaking like the world might fall if he didn't. I reached up, touched his jaw. I needed to hear that, I said, and I think I've wanted to say it too. His brow furrowed, so I leaned in. I want you too. His eyes closed. His breath shuddered. And when I kissed him, it wasn't to prove a point. It wasn't to win a fight. It was soft, certain, anchored in everything we hadn't said and finally could. He kissed me back like he was grateful, careful, gentle. Like I was something fragile only because I'd been held too roughly before. Clothes didn't fly this time. They were undone slowly, patiently. Each button a conversation, each breath a promise. We found the bed without words. He touched me like a secret. I touched him like a memory I didn't want to lose again. This wasn't hunger. This was homecoming. And when it was over, when our bodies were pressed together under the covers and his hand traced lazy patterns on my shoulder, he whispered, I still don't deserve you. I looked up. Good. I don't want to be deserved. I want to be loved. He smiled. Just a little. I'm working on that part. I laid my head against his chest. I know. That night, I slept without dreams, not a treaty, just us. Seth woke before me. I knew because he was already halfway out of bed by the time I opened one eye, shirtless, hair rumpled, gaze locked across the room like something had just gone terribly wrong. Then I saw it too, the bag, by the door, still zipped, still upright, still exactly where I left it last night, unpacked and untouched. Seth stared at it like it had personally betrayed him. Are you seriously panicking over that? I asked, groggy. He blinked, glanced back at me, then down at the sheet like he'd been caught in the act of spiraling. I thought, he began. I know what you thought. I yawned, stretched, then pulled the blanket up over my chest. It's pajamas, I said, and maybe a snack. His eyes narrowed, just slightly. A snack? You keep skipping breakfast. I was planning ahead. He looked at the bag, then at me, then back at the bag. You're not leaving? Oh my God, I groaned, sitting up. No, Seth, I'm not leaving. Relax, a beat. Yet, his shoulders tightened. I grinned. I'm kidding. He didn't look convinced. I padded over to the bag, unzipped it, and pulled out a pair of very fuzzy socks and a half-eaten chocolate bar. See? Pajamas. Emergency sugar. Not a threat. He ran a hand down his face and muttered something that sounded like you're going to kill me one day. I tossed him the socks. Not today. We had breakfast together. Actually together. Not in silence. Not on opposite sides of a table pretending we weren't aware of each other's breathing patterns. No, we talked. He made coffee. I stole toast. We bickered about jam flavors and who burned the eggs. It wasn't perfect. The dining room was still too big. The house still echoed like it hadn't figured out how to hold joy again. There were ghosts in the corners, and we both knew it, but for the first time, I didn't feel like I was haunting it too. Seth reached across the table, took my hand. No announcement. No declaration. Just a quiet moment of contact. You still packed a bag, he said. I smiled over my cup. I always will. Why? In case I forget that I can walk away. His thumb brushed my knuckles. And if I forget how to ask you to stay. I looked at him. At the man who once stood between me and the door, and now sat beside me with no chains in sight. Then I'll remind you, I said. But only if you make the eggs next time. His laugh was quiet, but real. And that was enough. The treaty was nullified by spring. Both packs signed the amendment quietly. No celebration, no fanfare. Just a simple agreement. No more bonded bargains. No more omega exchanges masquerading as diplomacy. What once made me a transaction was now just paper, voided and burned. I didn't watch it burn, Seth did. Then he came home, walked through the door, and pulled me into his arms without saying a word. That was enough. We didn't need ceremony. We had each other. Ilaria left first. She packed one small case, tied her hair up in a loose braid, and told me she wanted to see the ocean again before she forgot how to marvel at it. I spent too long being still, she said, cupping my cheek. Now that the roots have finally let go, I think I'll see what it's like to bloom somewhere wild. I didn't cry. Not then. But I did press my forehead to hers and whisper, "Thank you." She smiled. "Don't thank me, darling. You're the one who did the hard part. You chose yourself. Most people never even try." She was gone before sunrise. Kale sent a letter a week later. Short, polite, a little smug. Found someone. Strong omega. Sharp tongue. Terrible at cards. I'm in trouble already. Be well, Evan. I smiled reading it. Not the aching kind, just soft, real. He hadn't been the wrong choice, just not my choice. And that made all the difference. Seth and I didn't make a big announcement, no public bonding, no ceremony to prove what we already knew. We just started living. He stepped down from a few of his more brutal leadership duties. Let others take up some of the weight. I took on a small project, designing a new community center that would serve both packs. No trading of people involved. We found rhythm in the ordinary, and in it, us. One morning he found me in the front hallway, zipping up a small travel bag. He narrowed his eyes. "You packed again?" I didn't look up, just kept folding a hoodie into the side pocket. "Yep." His voice tensed slightly. "Planning to leave without telling me? Planning a weekend in the mountains," I said. "With you. Cabin. Fire. Minimal politics. Maximal snuggling." Seth blinked. I stood up, slung the strap over my shoulder. "Unless, of course, you have a crisis to manufacture and cancel on me for..." He walked over slowly, wrapped an arm around my waist. "This bag better not have chocolate in it again. No promises." He kissed me. Not possessive, not desperate. Just home. I leaned into him, smiling. "Don't worry, Alpha. This time, I'm only running with you." And we walked out the door. Together.